In the silver folds of the heavenly skies, Anira, the angel of purity and devotion, was assigned a critical mission. She was chosen to descend to Earth, a world tangled in shadows and light, where her purpose was simple yet crucial: guide a lost soul toward redemption. As Anira descended from the celestial gates, her wings shimmered with the radiance of heaven, leaving a trail of light in the vast expanse of the sky. Her heart, pure and unwavering, never questioned her mission, but there was something about Earth that felt different to her this time. The air, heavy with humanity's emotions, stirred something inside her she had never known before. She could see the world as humans did now, she could feel it. A strange longing bloomed in her heart. Anira touched down in the quiet town of Elysia, the wind playing with her golden hair, making her look almost otherworldly. Disguised in human form, she walked among the people, her mission focused on finding the one she was sent to help. That's when she saw him, Elliot. He was an artist, a dreamer. There was a subtle sadness behind his eyes, like he carried the weight of the world alone. Something about him drew her in, though she knew this feeling was forbidden. Her mission wasn't to be swayed by emotions, but Elliot's soul called out to her in a way no other had. And unknowingly, she began to change. Anira found herself returning to the same spot each day, observing Elliot from afar. His presence pulled her in. Every time he sketched in his notebook by the fountain, the sunlight filtering through the trees, she couldn't help but stand there longer than she intended. His eyes held an intensity she hadn't seen in a human before, a longing that echoed within her. One evening, as the golden hour bathed the town in a soft glow, Elliot noticed her watching. Their eyes met, and something profound passed between them, like a silent conversation they had been having for ages. He approached her cautiously, unsure if she was real or just another fleeting image from his imagination. "You seem familiar," Elliot murmured, his voice soft but curious. "Have we met before?" Anira's heart skipped a beat, a sensation entirely foreign to her celestial form. "No, but perhaps we were meant to." From that moment, their connection grew, like vines entangling despite the clear signs of danger. Anira knew her place, yet she couldn't resist the pull. The more time she spent with Elliot, the more human she became. She laughed with him, shared stories, and for the first time felt the warmth of human companionship. But deep inside, Anira knew the path they were treading would come with consequences. As the days passed, Anira's heart was no longer her own. She found herself drawn to Elliot in ways that terrified her. She wanted to reach out and tell him who she was, but she feared the consequences. Love between a human and an angel was not just forbidden, it was punishable by exile from heaven. One night, Elliot took Anira to his studio, showing her the paintings he had been working on. To her surprise, many of them were of her, his muse. The likeness was uncanny, yet he had captured more than just her appearance. He had painted her emotions, her inner turmoil, and the storm brewing inside her heart. "I don't know why," Elliot admitted, "but I feel like I've known you for 1,000 lifetimes." Tears welled up in Anira's eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the depth of her love for him, and with that came fear. She knew the angels were watching, and sooner or later, her secret would be discovered. That night, as Elliot slept, Anira stood by the window, looking up at the stars, whispering a silent prayer. "What am I doing?" In the silence that followed, a voice echoed in her mind, deep and commanding. "You know the consequences of what you feel. Turn back before it's too late." Elliot's life, once filled with solitary sketches and quiet moments of introspection, was now consumed by thoughts of Anira. Her beauty, her mystery, everything about her was unlike anyone he had ever met. But there was something he couldn't place, a feeling deep inside him that said she wasn't from this world. His dreams became more vivid after meeting her. In one, he saw Anira with wings of light rising high into the clouds, her expression torn between longing and despair. Each morning, he awoke with a sense of loss, as if he was destined to be separated from her. During the day when they were together, he noticed little things, how she never seemed to get cold or tired, or how she always knew what he was thinking before he even spoke.
And then there were the moments when she would look at him with such sadness as though something terrible loomed over them both. One evening, after a particularly haunting dream, Elliot couldn't hold back his questions any longer. "Anira," he began, his voice trembling, "I need to know, who are you? Really?" Anira stiffened, the weight of her secret pressing down on her. She had promised herself that she wouldn't tell him, but she also knew that withholding the truth was breaking her heart. She couldn't lie to him any longer. "Elliot," she whispered, "I am not from this world." He stared at her, confused but not surprised. "What do you mean?" "I am..." She hesitated, knowing that once she said the words, everything would change. "An angel." For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Elliot blinked, processing the enormity of her revelation. He had thought of many possibilities. Perhaps she was hiding from something, maybe she was part of some mystical tradition, but an angel? That was beyond anything he could have imagined. "An angel?" he echoed, his voice low, filled with disbelief. "I was sent here to guide a lost soul," she continued, her voice quivering, "but I never expected to fall in love with you." The air between them became thick with tension. Elliot took a step back, his mind reeling. Love? How could this be possible? How could an angel, one of God's divine beings, love someone like him? And what did that mean for them? "Anira," he whispered, but his words trailed off. He didn't know what to say. All he knew was that his world had just shifted irrevocably. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken feelings. Elliot, though initially overwhelmed, found himself drawn closer to Anira. Her confession didn't frighten him. If anything, it made him realize just how deep his feelings for her went. He couldn't deny that he was in love with her too, no matter the consequences. But for Anira, the weight of her love was growing unbearable. Each time she saw Elliot, the bond between them deepened, and so did her fear. Every stolen moment, every touch of their hands, was a silent rebellion against the divine order. She knew the angels were watching. She knew heaven would not stay silent for long. One evening, they walked together along the beach, the sky darkening into twilight. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, reflecting the purples and pinks of the setting sun. Elliot reached for her hand, pulling her closer, and for a moment it felt as if they were the only two souls in existence. "I don't care what you are," Elliot whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I love you, Anira, and I'll fight for you for us." Tears filled her eyes. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "Loving me is dangerous." "I don't care," he repeated more firmly this time. "We'll find a way." Before she could respond, the sky above them darkened unnaturally and a cold wind swept through the air. The peaceful beach was suddenly filled with a heavy, otherworldly presence. A voice, deep and commanding, echoed from the heavens, making the ground tremble beneath their feet. "Anira," the voice thundered, "you have broken the sacred laws of heaven. You know what must happen now." Anira fell to her knees, her wings unfurling in the face of the divine presence. Elliot knelt beside her, confused and terrified. "No," Anira cried. "Please, give me more time. I didn't mean for this to happen." The voice responded coldly. "You have defied the laws. Love between an angel and a mortal is forbidden. You must face the consequences unless..." Anira looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Unless what?" "Unless you choose, either you return to heaven, abandoning your love for the mortal, or you stay on earth, but you will fall, becoming human and losing all that makes you divine." Anira's breath caught in her throat. The choice was unbearable. If she returned to heaven, she would never see Elliot again. If she stayed, she would lose everything she had ever known. Beside her, Elliot gripped her hand tightly. "Anira," he whispered, "I'll be with you no matter what. We'll face this together." But Anira knew the choice wasn't that simple. To stay meant giving up her wings, her immortality, her purpose. Could she truly sacrifice it all for love? The weight of the ultimatum hung in the air, pressing down on both Anira and Elliot. The divine voice faded, but the choice it left behind was as real as the pulse racing in their veins. Anira stood, her wings shimmering faintly in the dim light, their brilliance beginning to fade as the reality of her decision settled in. She had always known her purpose, to guide souls, to remain pure and untethered by earthly desires. But now, everything she had been taught felt distant, a relic of a past that no longer resonated with her. Her heart had chosen a different path, one that defied all the rules. "I can't ask you to give up everything," Elliot said, his voice breaking. "You belong up there, Anira. I can't be the reason you fall." But she shook her head. "You are not the reason. I am." She reached for him, her hands trembling. "I never expected this, Elliot. I never thought I could feel what I feel for you, but now that I do, I can't imagine my life without you." They stood in silence, the waves crashing softly against the shore. Finally, Anira closed her eyes and whispered, "I choose you." The moment the words left her lips, a shockwave of energy rippled through the air. Her wings, once radiant and strong, began to disintegrate into soft feathers, carried away by the wind. Her celestial glow dimmed, her immortality slipping away with each passing second. Elliot watched, his heart aching as Anira's transformation took hold. She was becoming human, fragile, vulnerable, just like him. And though he wanted to celebrate their love, he couldn't shake the fear of what this meant for her. In the heavens, the angels watched in silence. Some wept for her fall, while others turned away, knowing that Anira's choice was irreversible. As Anira's transformation completed, the weight of her choice settled like a stone in her chest. She was no longer an angel, but human, a being of flesh and blood with all the fragility and mortality that came with it. Her wings were gone, her divine purpose erased, and now she stood at the edge of a world she barely understood. Elliot wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist, and it was only the two of them standing together under the vast expanse of stars. He felt her heartbeat against his chest, her warmth, her very human vulnerability. The love they shared felt like a victory, but it was tinged with the fear of what came next. "Anira," he whispered into her hair, "we'll make it through this. Together." But even as he said the words, a new terror struck him. The world they lived in wasn't kind to the extraordinary. There would be challenges they hadn't yet imagined. Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that love, no matter how powerful, might not be enough to protect them from what was to come. The following days were filled with joy and sorrow in equal measure. Anira marveled at the small things, the feel of raindrops on her skin, the taste of food, the warmth of a fireplace. She had never experienced life in such a tangible way, and it was exhilarating. But there were also nights when she would wake, trembling, haunted by memories of her life in heaven, by the voices of the angels she had left behind. One evening, as they sat together by the fire in Elliot's studio, she looked into his eyes and said, "I don't regret my choice, but sometimes I wonder, what if I made the wrong one? What if we aren't strong enough?" Elliot's heart clenched. He had asked himself the same question more times than he'd admit, but seeing the doubt in her eyes made him realize the stakes of their love went far beyond just the two of them. They were defying forces far greater than themselves. "I'll never stop fighting for us," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "Whatever comes, we face it together." But the universe wasn't done testing them. One cold winter's night, Anira fell ill. It started with a fever, something that would have been harmless to a human, but for Anira, newly mortal, and unused to the frailties of the body, it was devastating. Her once ethereal strength was gone, and her body, now fully human, was vulnerable to sickness and pain in a way that terrified Elliot. Elliot rushed her to every doctor he could find, but no one could explain the sudden, intense illness that gripped her. As she grew weaker, her skin paling and her breaths becoming shallow, Elliot realized with horror that this was the ultimate consequence of their love. By choosing to become human, Anira had sacrificed more than her immortality. She had sacrificed her very life. As Anira's condition worsened, Elliot's desperation grew. He spent countless nights by her side, holding her hand, watching as the person he loved more than anything faded before his eyes. Each breath she took was a battle, and with every passing hour her body grew weaker. Elliot couldn't bear it. He had been willing to sacrifice anything to be with her, but not this, not her life. In his darkest moment, he cried out to the heavens. Please, he begged, if anyone up there is listening, take me instead. Take anything, just don't take her. But the heavens remained silent. Then, as if in answer to his prayer, a figure appeared in the room. It was an angel, towering and majestic, glowing with a light that hurt Elliot's eyes. It was not just any angel, it was Seraphiel, one of the highest-ranking angels of the celestial realm, sent to pass judgment on Anira's forbidden love. Seraphiel's expression was unreadable as he looked down at the frail form of Anira lying on the brink of death. When he spoke was deep with the weight of divine authority. Anira was warned of the consequences of her choice. Seraphiel's gaze cold. She chose to abandon her divine nature for love, and now she must face the price of mortality. Elliot's heart shattered. Please, he whispered, falling to his knees before the angel. There must be something you can do. I can't lose her. I can't. Seraphiel's expression softened, just slightly, as he looked at Elliot's tear-streaked face. Love between an angel and a human was never meant to be, but sometimes... He paused, considering. Sometimes exceptions are made. Elliot's heart leapt with hope. What do you mean? Seraphiel stepped forward, his wings spreading slightly as he gestured to Anira. There is a way to save her, but it comes with a cost. His eyes met Elliot's. If you wish to save Anira, you must sacrifice your soul. You will never see her again, not in this life or the next. She will live, but you will be forgotten. Elliot's breath caught in his throat. The weight of the decision crushed him. Could he truly give up everything, his life, his future, his love, just to save her? But looking at Anira, lying there, fragile and fading, he knew there was only one answer. I'll do it, he whispered. I'll sacrifice everything for her. Seraphiel nodded solemnly. Then it shall be done. With a wave of the angel's hand, a bright light filled the room, so blinding that Elliot had to close his eyes. When the light faded, Anira was sitting up, her skin no longer pale, her breaths no longer labored. She was alive, fully healed. But Elliot was gone. Anira looked around in confusion, her heart aching with the sudden absence of something she couldn't remember. She felt as though a piece of her had been ripped away, but she didn't know why. Seraphiel stood over her, his wings folded. He loved you, the angel said softly. And his love saved you, but now you must live your life free from the past. Tears filled Anira's eyes, though she didn't fully understand why. She stood, feeling stronger than she had in days, but also deeply empty. Who? She whispered. Who saved me? Seraphiel said nothing, only turned to leave, his wings lifting him back toward the heavens. Anira was left alone, with no memory of the man she had once loved, but with a life ahead of her, a new beginning, forged through a love that had transcended even the laws of heaven. And so, the story of Anira and Elliot concludes, a love that defied the heavens but came at a great cost. Their love was powerful enough to break the laws of the divine, but in the end, the sacrifice Elliot made for Anira left a bittersweet legacy, one of forgotten love and a future unwritten. Thank you for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe. Bye.
Critical mission. She was chosen to descend to Earth, a world tangled in shadows and light, where her purpose was simple yet